All right, this video is actual application problems of these trig models we've been looking at, okay? Finding the equation from the graph and getting the graph from a word problem. So here we go. So here's the question. It says, a buoy in the harbor of San Juan, Puerto Rico bobs up and down. The distance between the highest and lowest point is 3 feet. It moves from its highest point down to its lowest point and back every 8 seconds. So this every 8 seconds is our period of the graph. Okay. The distance between the highest and lowest is 3 feet. So if the highest is here and the lowest is here, this whole distance is 3 feet. So if I split it in half, I get 3 halves here, negative 3 halves here. Okay. Distance every 8 seconds. So 8 seconds is my time of the period. Okay. Find the equation of the motion for the buoy, assuming that it's at equilibrium point, that's 0, at time equals 0, so it starts at 0, 0, and the buoy is on its way down at the time. Now, what am I looking for? Well, look at the bottom. It says I'm looking for a sine curve, so it needs to begin at the midline and end at the midline. Well, it tells me that the buoy is going down first. Okay, so if it's going down first, I'm going to go down, come up, and then end at the 8-second mark. All right, so that's my sine curve. Now notice it's a reflected sine curve, so whatever A is, it has to be negative. I know that from the beginning because it goes down first instead of up. Now, I've drawn my graph. I have what I need to calculate my quantities here. So remember, A is 1/2 the maximum value minus the minimum value. Well, the minimum value is negative, so it becomes a plus 3 halves. So I will have 1/2 times 6 halves. Remember, when you add fractions, it stays the same. So 6 over 4, which reduces to 3 over 2. No surprises there. Okay. B is the period, right? Well, we know the period of time it takes is 8 seconds. So I do 2 pi over B equals 8. Cross multiply. Solve it. So B is going to be, reduce that, I get pi over 4. All right, C. Well, we have a C value if it doesn't start at 0, 0, but notice our curve, our segment of our curve does start at 0, 0. So I could go through it and say, okay, B, remember it's bx minus c equals 0. Well, B is pi over 4. X, though, is 0, minus c is 0. So that's just going to mean that c is 0 in this case. And then lastly, to calculate D, remember it's 1/2 the maximum plus the minimum. So I don't change my sign. Well, that's just going to be 0. All right, since it's a sine curve, now I'm going to put things in. So y equals negative 3 halves sine pi over 4x. And that's my equation. All right, that's my equation. Notice here, everything's in fractions. You don't mix decimals and fractions, so make sure you leave it all in one thing, which is going to be fractions, since our radians are always fractions. Let's try this one. A high tide in Bay is 4 meters above sea level and low tide is 4 meters below sea level. So if 0 is sea level, high tide's at 4, low tide's at negative 4. The time between the tides is approximately 12 hours. So it takes 12 hours for the cycle. Assuming that it's at high tide at 0, determine an equation describing the motion of the tides. Well, what am I looking for? Notice it's a cosine curve, so it's going to look like this. It's going to be peak to peak. Well, if it's at high tide at time 0, this is where my curve is going to start. It's going to come down and come back up. But it takes 12 hours for that to happen, right? So here's my graph. Now I find the values. A is 1/2 the max minus the minimum. So it's 1/2 of 8, which is 4. All right, stop and think. Do I need to reflect this? Is this a reflected cosine? No. It starts at the peak, ends at the peak. It's not starting at the trough. It's starting at the top part of the curve. So it's going to be a positive 4. Now B. 2 pi over B equals, well, how long did it take? It takes 12 hours. So that equals 12. So if I cross multiply, divide by 12, reduce that, I get pi over 6, so b is pi over 6. Alright, then to find c, I do bx minus c equals 0, or bx equals c, if you want to solve it for c first. B we know is pi over 6. X is what's the x value where the curve starts? Well, our curve starts at 0, so it's just 0. So guess what? C is just 0. D, what is D? Well, D is 1/2 the maximum plus the minimum, and in this case it's going to be 0. 4 minus 4 is 0 times 1/2 is 0. So my cosine is y equals 4 cosine pi over 6x. Alright, let's try one more. A trapeze artist stands on a platform 20 feet in the air. When time is 0, she leaves the platform. So she's at a platform right here, 20 feet in the air. She reaches a total height of 30 feet at the peak of her swing. After she takes off, it takes 10 seconds for her to return to the platform height after the peak. Remember, she's going to drop down first and then rise to the peak of her fly. So if she drops off the platform, it's going to come down, then go up, and come back down, right? So if I extend my line, it takes how long to return to the platform height? It says it takes 10 seconds for her to return to the platform height after she's reached the peak. So this is a 10-second mark right here. So let's think here, okay? If she rises, if here's the midline right here, that's the platform height, right? Think about how far is she going down? Well, if you don't know for sure, think about how far is she going up. We know she's going up 10 feet, right? That means she has to go down 10 feet. She's not going to go below 0, below ground level. She's going to just go down to 10 feet in the air. So draw the dotted line showing the midline at y equals d. Well, we kind of figured that out because that's where the platform is, all right? Now we know that this, looking at the problem, it's a sine curve. So we need to go midline to midline. Notice it's a reflected sine curve because it goes down first. So my a value will be negative. Now let's calculate a. A is 1/2 the maximum, which is 30, minus the minimum, which is 10. Okay, so 1/2 times 20 is 10. All right, so it's going to be negative 10. B is the period, so 2 pi over b equals what? 10 seconds, it says. If I cross multiply, 10b equals 2 pi, divided by 10, it gives me pi over 5. To find c, all right, bx minus c equals 0, which means that bx equals c. Well, we know that b is pi over 5. X, what's the x value where the curve begins? Well, the curve begins at 0, so c is going to be 0. And then lastly, d. D is 1/2 the maximum plus the minimum. And what do we get? We get 40. Half of 40 equals 20, which we already figured that out. That's the height, right? So it's 20 is my d value. Now I can put it in a sine equation. Y equals negative 10 sine pi over 5x plus 20. All right? There's my solution. Okay? Hopefully you're getting this. It's making some sense. Now on this one, I want you to write this down, and we're going to go over this first thing tomorrow in class. But I want you to take a moment, write the problem down. Feel free to attempt it yourself, see how far you can get, and we're going to start with this example when we get to class tomorrow. All right? See you then.